Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Explain It to Me. This is going to be a different episode because it's just me and Ashton. I don't know how this is going to go.
It'll be fine, I'm sure.
Yeah. Molly's not feeling well, so she's taking a break and reading The Rising Storm. And literally nobody wanted to talk to us about this episode.
Nobody.
But nope. So I'm just going to be the one throwing a bunch of questions at you and hoping for the best.
God.
But what did you think of the episode first?
I liked it a lot. I thought it was really exciting. Like a lot happened in this episode.
Yeah.
And then like they did a lot of things in this episode that I wasn't expecting yet. You know, like them actually meeting the timekeepers and all that was like,
yeah.
I didn't think they were going to go there that early. So that was cool. And obviously the ending is like really exciting.
So I totally agree. Thought it was a great episode. Really love what they're doing with Loki and with Sylvie. So yeah, let's just talk about the Time Lords first. Remind me, they are real in the comics, right?
So there's things called the Timekeepers in the comics, but I think they might be related to the TVA, but they were introduced around a different storyline, I think, if I remember right. I mean, those comics are so old; it's been a long time since I've read them, but there are Timekeepers in the comics, yes.
Okay, yeah. I went ahead and I got some of these pulled up so we don't have to do it in the middle of the show. I went and saved images first, but yeah, I was really surprised to see even that glimpse of them, and then I wasn't expecting to see the full-on reveal. Molly called it right away. She was like, they don't look quite right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and it was kind of hard to understand them too, like the echoey sort of effect that they did on their voice. It was kind of hard to understand. I had to turn closed captions on.
Oh, you know what? Hold on, Ken. Stand by on your DMs. Yeah, I was surprised that they were, I don't know if I was surprised or not that they were animatronic or whatever, because it was like definitely giving off those, I think we've been talking about the Wizard of Oz vibes, and it still felt like that. So I wasn't really like, oh my God, they're robots, but I thought that they were going to do.
Honestly, I was kind of surprised. Like, they got me, you know, like where I was like this whole time I was like, oh, the Timekeepers are probably not real. You know, all that. There was like that sort of feeling. But then when they get to them and meet them and they start talking to them, I was like, oh shit, I guess they are real. Like, I guess we are going to actually have actual timekeepers. But then, you know, they turn out to be robots. So it's like a roller coaster of whether I thought they were real or not.
Yeah. So I did write down, because this seems to suggest, you know, that there's still Kang stuff going on, but like I'm also wondering if Kang is the new Mephisto.
Could be.
Of times we brought him up.
I mean, there's just a lot that would there's a lot of things leading me to believe that Kang is actually involved, though, because like the Timekeepers not being in charge of everything, the fact that Ravonna is a big part of the story, and that it's all about time travel and stuff, and we know Kang is going to be in a series soon. It all just makes it seem like, you know, it just makes too much sense for it to be Kang. But yeah, I mean, maybe it's going to be. I mean, that's what we were saying about Mephisto too. So,
well, we didn't like Mephisto wasn't in a he wasn't announced as like someone who's cast in a future movie. So this definitely has a lot more actual evidence to it, I think. But yeah, I am like laughing just about how every week we're like, Kang? And it's just, if it doesn't turn out, it's going to be hilarious.
Yes.
So at the end, Mobius and Loki get, what do they call it? Pruned?
Pruned, yeah.
And I definitely screamed when it happened to Mobius, but the second it happened to Loki, I was like, he's fine. And then we see where he went. So what's that other place with all the other Lokis? Is that like...
Well, so from the background that we can see, it looks like it's another... It's the shot that I was talking about last episode where There's a shot from the trailer that is like an apocalypse New York, basically, where all the city's in ruins and everything, but you can see Avengers Tower in the background. And the background looked like it was that. So it looks like they're on Earth, and it's like some future, post-apocalyptic Earth. But what that means, who knows?
Yeah. So do you think that's where all pruned people go? Or is that where just pruned Lokis go?
Maybe. I mean, it would kind of make sense if maybe, if they don't have the ability to just destroy people, or if they, for whatever reason, would rather imprison people somewhere, maybe they have an offshoot timeline that they've just kept around purely to use as a, jail for people that they want to get rid of. And I mean, maybe that would be useful because you're dealing with superheroes and stuff. And so maybe, some time comes where you're like, oh, you know what? That guy that we pruned, it would be nice if we had him to use in this situation. Then go grab him, that sort of thing.
Sure. Just like a little holding cell.
Yeah. Which makes the fact that there's a whole bunch of Lokis there make a lot of sense because the TVA has already talked about how they're constantly having to deal with all of these Loki issues.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get to them, and I got a picture of them. But I'm curious if next week maybe we'll see the guy that got pruned in that first episode, the one that refused to take a ticket, just to show that everyone who gets pruned goes here. Which then is Mobius better be around. Hopefully, he's still alive. And okay, we got a guest. What's up, Ken?
Did I miss the Mephisto conversation yet?
Yeah, you did. We're basically wondering if Kang is the new Mephisto.
I mean, isn't everything the new Mephisto?
Apparently, yeah.
At this point, I kind of gave up with this episode speculating. Because none of it's really coming to pass. All of the talk about Kang, all of the talk about I was happy about the TVA, but it seemed a natural assumption that they were going to be variants as a way to explain it. But I was burned on Mephisto, and I do think it's going to be Kang in some form or fashion, because as Ashton was just talking about, the Ravonna tell. I don't think you pick something that big from lore and wholly ignore it. Even if we never see Kang, but it sets up Kang for the introduction in Ant-Man and Wasp. I still think you don't have that there unless we're going to get some kind of nod towards a shadowy figure at the end holding a watch. I don't know.
Or an hourglass or something. Yeah.
Yeah. A cosmic hourglass that's powered by Infinity Stones.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Time Lord animatronic thing, it feels a lot like Iron Man 3 with the Mandarin, who's not really the Mandarin. And then we get Guy Pearce's character instead. It definitely has that Wizard of Oz vibe. So I think that there's more to learn. Whether or not they take the TVA down, I agree that Kang seems likely.
I mean, if we're looking at a 6-episode season plotted like a movie, then these next 2 episodes have to really move into Endgame explaining everything. I mean, by this point in WandaVision, if you're looking at a 3-act structure, we had the reveal of Agatha. So I think next episode is going to be where all the cards are on the table as seen by that alternate timeline world, which is what I'm assuming that sort of dumping ground is for variants.
And that's, great. Now we're right back where we were. Perfect. Because I had a question about when we see the President Loki thing, I think there's a shot where a bunch of people hold up a bunch of makeshift weapons to him. And I think we talked last week about there being a Mad Max kind of ruined wasteland. So all these people could just be variants who are trying their best to survive in this other timeline or world or wherever they've been sent.
Yeah, and they're all wearing ramshackle sort of put together armor and stuff. So it kind of fits with this whole okay, they're in a post-apocalyptic New York setting now. So maybe there are barbarian savages roaming around with tire irons with big blades on them and stuff. It would make sense for that to be where they are now.
So this is the introduction of Galactus into the MCU. Ashton, can
Well,
you
can
you deep dive into Marvel 2-in-1 number 100? Can you go that far back?
No.
Well, this may be where you're headed with this, but I'm wondering if this other timeline, could it be like the darkest possible timeline that they've found? And yeah,
So
maybe
the
it's
whole
like,
idea
some
is
being called
hiding-
Galactus came by and
Well, if you're playing into Sylvie's whole trick of hiding out where nothing comes out, nothing's going to be able to report. You're hiding out in disasters. Is the ultimate disaster sort of a burned out husk of an Earth where you can just dump all of these variants that you're disposing of in a place where no one's going to go look for them because it's essentially a timeline that is a trash pit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a ruined Earth. Nothing's happening there. Nothing was alive. It was sucked dry, and you're just dumping them all there.
That would be interesting if they got like Galactus written into something, even if it was just a little. They could hint at it, I guess. They don't have to say the name. Seems too soon since the Fox stuff.
No, I was being obsequious about that.
Well, I like the idea.
But I mean, honestly, they could, because I mean, if they're not even going to show them on screen, it's not like they'd need the time to, create those effects and design the character and everything. If it's just he gets mentioned in a line, I could see that happening already, because they could easily just change something, like change a line.
The deep dive reference I was making to annoy even myself was that in Marvel 2-in-1 number 50, Marvel 2-in-1 was a book that teamed up the Thing with other characters. So Spider-Man had Marvel Team Up, where he would team up randomly with Howard the Duck or Man-Thing or whoever they would throw on him that month. The Thing's version of that was Marvel 2-in-1. In number 50, he teamed up with himself, with the Thing of an alternate timeline. And he was able to cure that Thing and make him Ben Grimm again. You fast forward to Marvel 2-in-1 100, he goes back to that Earth to find out it is a husk, because by curing the Thing wasn't available to help the Fantastic Four defeat Galactus in their first meeting, and Galactus sucked the Earth dry, so it's a post-apocalyptic wasteland. That's all that's left there. I mean, it does have hallmarks of sort of a desolate planet that has been ravaged in such a fashion.
I like that, and I think it'll be my headcanon if they don't explicitly say
what happened to the Earth. Yeah.
I do like this too. Jake suggests it could be, with all the Lokis there, is it a timeline where Loki won?
Could be. I mean, that would be an extra gut punch to Loki, which has been the if there is a theme of this show, it's been kick Loki while he's down every time, which would be like, oh yeah, if you had won, this is what would have happened, you dummy.
Also a punch to Thanos, since Loki was a middleman.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
I really like this question too, Adam. I'm going to write it down for later because I don't want to get sidetracked off the Lokis, but that's a good question. Okay, so let's talk about the Loki variants, because I got some images. So is it possible that Richard E. Grant's old Loki, maybe he won in this
he's not old Loki.
Yeah, he's not like the MCU Loki that we know. That's right. Specifically like in the credits. In the credits, he's called Classic Loki, and in the comics, like that Loki is the Loki that basically like becomes God Loki and is like super cynical and probably the most evil Loki in the comics anyway. In the show, they might not really go that route with that character, but he's like he's the original Loki that's been beaten down. That's the Loki
in that outfit that fought the Avengers in their debut story in Avengers #1 and brought the Avengers together. That's the OG Loki.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's probably going to be a bad guy if we're to guess.
Well, it would kind of make sense for him to be kind of like if we're going by like the devil and the angel on your shoulder thing, he's the devil, and then Kid Loki is the angel, because like Kid Loki is the version of Loki that's actually the best. Like he's the most good guy of any Loki.
He's like the Sylvie of Lokis.
Okay.
Like, so basically in the comics, Loki gets destroyed or killed, and he gets reincarnated as Kid Loki, but he died trying to save Asgard. Like he sacrificed himself, so he died doing something good, and so the reincarnation of him only really knew how to be good, and so it was like a good version of him. And then the comic book stuff happens, and in the end, Kid Loki had to sacrifice himself by letting another old Loki that came back destroy him and absorb his power. But then he becomes kind of like the good conscience for Loki afterwards in the comics, which is kind of cool. But he's another character who's involved with the Young Avengers also. So
that should be a drinking game for this series now. It's just any reference to the Young Avengers assembling in these shows.
I'm going to save the best for last. And who's the Loki with a hammer?
So in the credits, that's Boastful Loki. He's, from what I can tell, not really based on a comic version of Loki. But
he does have a Thor-esque hammer.
He does, yeah.
So maybe he's an amalgam of sort of a warrior Loki.
I was wondering if it was a Thor variant at first.
I mean, he could even also be a Loki from a universe where Odin favored him instead of Thor.
Oh, I like that.
Because boastfulness is certainly a Thor attribute.
Of Thor, even.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. It was basically.
I like that. Thor Loki, basically.
Yeah,
that's
and in his universe, like Thor becomes kind of the like mischievous, trickster.
Loki is canon now.
I like that. Okay, and then finally, is it crocodile or alligator Loki?
It's alligator, I think.
Okay.
So that's not from the comics.
It's not?
No, but Loki can transform into animals,
right?
And he does all the time. So it could just be a Loki that's transformed into an alligator and got stuck that way or something, or it
like
could
Animorph style.
Yeah,
he stayed that way for 2 hours. And
yeah, he knew the risks, but I mean, or it could just be a new Loki. I mean, maybe somebody else turned him into an alligator, so he doesn't have the power to change back or something. Because like we talked about Throg in the last week, and that's like a time when Loki turned Thor into a frog, and then Thor as a frog met another frog that used to be a human, and like teaches him to be a hero basically, and then that frog is obsessed with Thor and becomes Throg. So, I mean, maybe this will be like a Throg related. Maybe we will get Throg. Who knows?
I will, I've only just learned about Throg since a week ago, but I desperately want to see it happen. And now next episode seems like the time to do it.
Yeah.
At least in passing, even if we get just a visual on screen.
Yeah, if it's like maybe we get like a flashback from each of them in their own timelines, and the Gator is like fighting Throg or something.
Yeah, sort of like they did with Spider-Verse, where we got a sort of glimpse of them each in their native universes.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be really fun.
At least we might get a classic Thor outfit out of the classic Loki flashback.
Yeah. And they could get different actors for all of them. Oh, that'd be really fun.
How many Hemsworths do we have lined up? Can we get like Chucky Hemsworth? And
I'm trying to remember if one of them already appeared. Didn't one of them play in the play? Yeah.
Yeah. We got the one from Westworld. Wasn't he the one? Who was
Liam?
Because he's the shortest of the Hemsworths, and that was a gag on that.
Real quick, I want to come back to the other Lokis, but RG2088, thanks for the super chat. Is it possible that it's he who remains that's behind it all, trying to prevent Kang from existing or coming into power? And I have no idea who he who remains is.
I'll let Ken explain that
one. Gotta go, guys. Bye.
Buckle up. Okay.
I'm trying to remember the exact lore of He Who Remains. Ashton, you take it while I'm remembering.
I honestly don't really remember much about that character either. He's from comics that I didn't really read all that much. So.
I mean, I can't imagine the structure of the TVA, like you setting it up to be that sinister an organization with what it's doing to people and have it be the force for good to hold Kang at bay kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a final line of dialogue now. He who remains.
Oh, is that okay? Did He Who Remains create the TVA?
Oh,
Was he a member of the, or he created the construct of the? But if it's, I would not, if it's what it probably is, we'll probably find out that He Who Remains is an aspect of Kang from somewhere along Kang's timeline. I mean, I would make it a Mortis if you're going to tie it into that sort of thing of who would actually work to prevent Kang from doing his Kang stuff, which they did in the Avengers crossover with the cross-time Kangs. It was ultimately an Immortus that was working with Ravonna to keep Kang at bay and undermine him.
This is He Who Remains as the final director of the TVA at the Citadel at the end of time, the last reality of the multiverse. But even like,
so he's the
it looks like he only appeared 5 times in any of the comics.
Those are would those be in the 2000s? Because that might be in a bit of a blank period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like the last one was in the late 90s.
Given that description, my headcanon would be that it's some weird version of Franklin Richards, probably. Because he's supposed to, survive everything.
Franklin is the child of Susan and Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. It's basically a godlike being.
Yeah, he's pretty much the most powerful character in Marvel Comics. And Galactus, at one point, he makes Galactus his herald for a while, which is hilarious. And Galactus tells him that at the end of the universe, it's going to be Franklin Richards and Galactus as the only 2 things left, and that they'll go on to the next universe and be the next Galactus.
And they just perform heralds.
Yeah,
yeah, that's it.
They're just doing improv shows.
Yeah, this time let me be the herald. Okay, how are we going to eat this planet? Let's do it. We need help. Oh, I hate that.
Okay, so we've explained all the Loki variants. Now I want to know if maybe in the next episode, this is my speculation, that we do the President Loki thing. Is he trying to become president of the Lokis? Maybe the older classic Loki is in charge and new Loki is trying to take control and hold an election or something.
Could be. I mean, maybe there is some semblance of a society in this world that they're in, and Loki tries to organize in charge. Like maybe they actually have elections to decide who's in charge of Apocalypse New York, but with all these like misfits there, and Loki tries to win.
Apocalypse New York does sound like a Vegas attraction, though.
Yeah, I mean, they don't seem all of that like receptive to the idea of voting for him. Like they all shove weapons in his face. So
true. Well, the campaign trail can be a vicious.
Assuming that's not another Loki variant that we're.
Yeah, it could just be another Loki. Also,
that's true.
I tend to think that it's probably not, just because he was in the trailer, and like most of the shots from the trailer are like the main character Loki going through things.
Although now that would be the shot from the trailer that is deepest into the series.
It's true. Well, no, there was a shot of Heimdall that we still haven't seen.
Right.
Assuming that's not a flashback scene.
Yeah.
Right.
Was that ever analyzed to see if that wasn't just a shot of showing a clip from one of the films as his bit in it?
Could be. I don't know.
I mean,
the Sif thing was kind of was kind of like, oh, that's an interesting way to have a cameo from the character.
I mean, I could see a cool progression of like, oh, the last apocalypse they visit in this show is Asgard's apocalypse, right before it gets destroyed. Like that would be pretty neat. And, we could see Heimdall fighting people if they get there early enough, Well,
at what point in Ragnarok's timeline in that film was he already removed from his position? Because remember, it was Loki as Odin had already removed Heimdall from that position, so he wasn't running the Rainbow Bridge. He was
he was like in the fugitive camp, but they were like fighting all the time, so I don't know. But it would be cool to see him go to the Asgard Ragnarok apocalypse.
But then it would be those 2 clips then would be the furthest, deepest into the show.
Yeah.
It's funny, like I've watched that trailer one time, I think, where I'm like, I can't. If this were a Star Wars conversation, I would like know every shot, and then so I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't even remember Heimdall in the trailer because I didn't frame by frame it. Clip. Yeah. We got another super chat. Thanks, Therol. Loki Gator versus Throg. Young Sylvie played young Ray. Judith Grimes crossover meme. Besides the Loki charms, what Marvel cereal would you like?
Loki charms. That's pretty good.
They really did that, didn't they? Didn't they send it out to some people?
Oh, they didn't
like
send it out.
promotional thing?
It was a very, very limited, I think only 1,000 pieces that you could order online, a box of Loki charms.
Okay.
As an online promotion that sold out, I think, within 5 seconds of being offered. But it was a cartoon version of Loki on the front of the box.
Other cereals.
Yeah.
Thoreos is the first thing that comes into my head.
That's pretty good.
I mean, like you could do Infinity Stones instead of Fruity Pebbles.
Mm-hmm.
Basically the same thing. That's an easy sell.
Cookie Kangs.
Yeah.
Tricks, but it's also Loki.
Again.
Or it's Rocket Raccoon. He's the rabbit.
Oh, he would hate that. That'd be great.
Cereal just for rabbits now.
Yeah. I am out of questions. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about before we really? I've got Adam's question queued up, but is there anything anyone wants to bring up before we move on?
It was referenced in the comment. Did you clock onto it the fact that it was the same actor playing young Sylvie as played young Ray?
Oh, I mean, I didn't until you texted me.
I guess Disney owns her. Is that how that works? It's just like now you're just in the family. You're going to be the young character in everything we do now. That's pretty lucrative to be in 2 universes, though.
It feels like HBO to me. HBO seems to use a lot of the same actors for their series, and then why wouldn't you if you're in the Disney family? And we know we had fun working with you in Star Wars. You did a great job. Like, here, come on in and be in Loki, and vice versa. Like Richard E. Grant, Star Wars. Now he's here.
Oh,
I wonder which call came first.
I was still thinking about the cereal.
I knew there was just like.
It would have been great if that lasted for another hour.
No, it was Apple Drax is the one that I came up with.
Apple Drax is good.
Anyway, moving on. I don't have to think about that anymore.
It's all right. I wanted to talk about. I think it's probably too far up for me to. No, I can't reach it anymore up in the chat. But Adam D'Onofrio wants to know why there was a Nexus event at the start. Oh, there it is. Thought it didn't matter what happened in an apocalypse because they were going to die before the TVA showed up. My assumption is that they changed something that had never been changed in an apocalypse before.
I mean, could be, but like if they were going to die, then it shouldn't have caused an actual split off on the time. My interpretation is that, like, so up until now, Sylvie has hidden in apocalypses and then left, so nothing about that timeline really changed. But the thing with this one is that something about the Lokis changed. And then if they survived somehow, which maybe they did, I mean, they're gods, like they potentially could get reincarnated or something. And then maybe because of what had just happened, they're different than they would have been otherwise.
So here's the thing, Alex. They're a time dyad. And that imbues.
I mean, it's kind of like, 2 souls that are one. Like, they are the same person, which I'm glad that Mobius, called that out for being so narcissistic and a little gross. And I'm like, they're different people, but, it does feel a little I don't know, a little dicey.
We don't know how the Frost Giant culture works when it comes
That's
to that.
true. It's not quite Lannister territory, but I'm like, it's broaching that.
Yeah, but nothing happened. Never got there. He was put in his post-apocalyptic box and never happened. I mean, maybe it's just this is the first time that Loki has respected anyone else.
I
mean, that would be
there's
accomplishment
because it is him.
Yeah.
Well, even I mean, his entire claim throughout the series was that he would instantly be the best Loki, no matter the Loki, and then or that he'd be able to manipulate any other Lokis that he encountered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though the sort of thing like, well, I know you, you're a Loki. You know, he fully expected that means I could take advantage of you. That was the angle he was going to work. That I know myself, I know what I would do, so that's I'd be able to pull a fast one on myself.
Which is kind of great because he ended up interacting with a Loki that was at least relatively close to like himself. And now he gets thrown into this situation where it's like, oh, here's Loki who thinks that he knows everything about all these other Lokis, and now he's encountering like an alligator Loki and kid Loki.
That's the only one I want him talking to in the next episode. Just him trying to make a connection with Alligator Loki.
At the end of the next episode, he's going to be holding hands with the Alligator Loki.
Yeah,
Nexus happy Event. Together. Place.
Well, that is something about Mobius basically says like the connection you have is big enough to bring the TVA down. So like how I guess like they could go and change something in a timeline so fast because that spike was so huge that they could.
But maybe it's just the idea and the concept of Loki already being powerful and a concern. But then the idea of Loki on equal terms actually working together with someone. Because most of Loki's defeats are self-defeats because he tries to pull a fast one at the end and it undermines him completely. Like in Ragnarok, when he tried to pull a fast one on Thor and Thor slaps the device on him and, incapacitates him at that last moment. That didn't have to happen. They could have made an actual connection. He could have gone off in that moment and been fine with Thor and having made that. But Loki's always got to work the angle. They always got to come out on top, undermine that. And so maybe that was the moment with Sylvie of actually making a connection, being on equal terms, and the idea of working together was the thing that was enough of an event to go, oh, no, this is a problem. We've never had a Loki actually want to work with someone on equal terms before.
I really like that if that's the basic thing, that if you two are actually working together, that just the two of you, then you can take down the TVA. And so then if he convinces all these other Lokis, we kind of joked about it last week, but the cabin in the woods, like hit the button and purge all the Lokis come out.
And if they convince 5 Lokis, and if they convince 5 Lokis.
Yeah, they have a pyramid scheme of Lokis.
Yeah. And I mean, and now that we know that these prune devices are presumably sending people to this time jail instead of actually destroying them, maybe he is going to run into Troll Loki and Tour de France Loki and all these other ones that we saw the pictures
thousands of Lokis riding on a sea of jet skis all towards a final battle with Kang and Mephisto.
I love
the end of
that
time.
idea. It like that, even it feels kind of jokey, like Cabin in the Woods sometimes was, with like the unicorn running around stabbing people, and it's like that's horrible but also funny. Like just like imagining Loki like riding a bike around and attacking people in the TVA is
that's where the Tour de France Loki comes in. He's riding his bike.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, he had his
bike jet skis.
Did his bike get pruned with him? That's the big question.
He could probably find one in the wasteland somewhere.
The bike is probably just a manifestation of himself that he's.
Yeah, you can just
pull like his dagger. It's like his dagger. Instead of pulling daggers, he pulls bicycles.
Yeah.
Out of his little pocket dimension that he accesses these things through.
We discussed this a bit, but Jane, thanks for the super chat. I hope this hasn't come up already, but do y'all think everyone and everything that gets pruned go to wherever Loki is at the end? That's my assumption and hope, because I want Mobius to be there.
If everything that gets pruned goes to that universe, that comment saying everyone and everything made me think they pruned an entire cart full of Infinity Stones earlier.
Oh, shit.
So is that sitting around in New York somewhere?
Maybe that's the quest in the next episode, is to locate the cart of Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
Do you? Oh man, I mean,
but does that mean we're also was Agent 20 also pruned? We don't see what actually happened to her after the interrogation, but is the assumption that that's how they eliminated her so she could show back up as well? Maybe. I mean, I certainly think that if you're not going to establish with the exact same effect and tool that Loki somehow got transported to this other place and not have it happen to everyone else. I mean, it
Or
seems
if
like a dumping ground, because then it makes the TVA less powerful.
Uh-huh.
It's like you're not actually capable of pruning people from a timeline. You're just shunting them into a dumping ground.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
that's been kind of a thing so far, is like not everything the TVA claims to be, they're not actually capable of all those things. You know, like the timekeepers are basically just like Doctor Who Chuck E. Cheese. And like, you know, their prune devices actually just don't destroy people. They send them to another dimension. Like, it seems like they're basically lying about everything.
Well, then if Kang the Conqueror is in charge of all this, does that undercut him at all, in your opinion?
I mean, maybe, but
I mean, they still have to be powerful. They have been traveling through time. We have seen them traveling through time. Regardless of what they're doing and able to affect upon people, we've seen them gone back to medieval France. We've seen, or that period in France. We've seen them going back to the 1980s. We've seen time travel within the timeline. We just don't know if they're capable of actually what the pruning entails.
yeah.
Even.
Mhm.
You know,
They went to the Georgia Renaissance Festival.
Yeah.
They could have so many swords from the pirate auction that they can just take over the world now.
No, you bought them all, Ashton. Every time Ashton goes straight to the pirate auction.
I'm just imagining you should have like an iron throne made out of all of the swords that you've bought.
I'd be interested to see how big of a chair you could make with all the blades in your house.
I could make a chair. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Wouldn't be a good chair, but it's
Wouldn't be a very good one.
Not quite a throne, like a folding chair.
Yeah.
An iron folding chair.
So, well, I want to go back to your Infinity Stone thing, because I mean, that's an amazing thought. But would they would work there, I assume, but then could you use them to get back to the TVA, or would maybe like old classic Loki, maybe he would decide he just wants to stay and rule with the Infinity Stones in this old beat up universe or something?
But Ashton, you've made the point in the shows before about the speculation that the TVA probably exists within the quantum realm. At which point you would assume, based on also what we've seen in the TVA, that the Infinity Stones don't work there. So you wouldn't be able to affect anything. I don't think you could even travel there with the Infinity Stones. I mean, Thanos couldn't, or he would have. I mean, you certainly would use that as a way of traveling. And
does Thanos know about the TVA?
I mean, it didn't seem like Thanos knew about the quantum realm. I mean, he only discovered it from picking through Nebula's thoughts.
I mean, maybe they can just use the Infinity Stones to make a device like that in the Avengers that sent them there, you know? But that does seem kind of like cheaty, you know, like, oh, I have powers that give me powers that work, you know, like.
But it does seem like the way that Marvel has often treated like Limbo as a realm of like, well, here's a place where you can sort of hide out. This is a place where things don't work and it's out of the way, and you know, none of your rules work here. So,
I mean, maybe they can just use the Infinity Stones to fix Loki's TemPad.
Yeah,
Does he still have it?
Now,
I don't remember. Did he throw it away, or did he?
Yeah, he tossed it
again. Okay.
Yeah. I'm still baffled by that.
Oh, although
that presumes that those items don't actually disappear.
And does Mobius still have Ravonna's TemPad? He got pruned. I can't
No,
remember.
he gave it back to her.
Okay. What happened to B-15? Was she
just knocked
pruned?
out?
She was just knocked out.
Yeah, she just.
They
dropped her to the ground, but they did not prune her.
I was just yelling that no one pruned Ravonna. Like, what are you doing? Just, it takes a second to just like poke her.
Also, Ravonna, when you take out first Loki, you don't just do the second jab to take out second Loki. Too.
Exactly.
Those pauses in fights are always weird.
I
mean, maybe they don't want to send them both to the same place because them in the same place is dangerous.
That's true. Maybe there was a reason.
I'd have to go back and look. Did you either of you do a second look to see if Ravonna was actively surprised by the Chuck E. Cheese reveal of the Timekeepers. Because she just seemed genuinely concerned when she goes up earlier in the episode to have an audience with them.
Mhm.
But you think she'd be a little more freaked out if she didn't know that was the case by suddenly having, them do their breakdown in Pirates of the Caribbean bit.
Well, especially at the end, like after they've chopped one of their heads off and it's just a robot and they're standing there like, oh, what do we do now? And then the fact that she's still fighting and isn't just like apocalyptically disturbed that her entire like universe is shattered in front of her,
I think she knows, and the line of Sylvie saying, "You're going to tell me everything." Like, I think that's saying to the audience that she knows more and will tell us more. But it is interesting that, yeah, she did seem intimidated by the robots at the start of the episode, but maybe that was all an act for like the guards in there.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, another thing to point out is that, like, assuming Ravonna's in on it, when did she become in on it? Because we saw the flashback that she used to basically just be, like Mobius, and she wasn't a judge, but she hasn't always been a judge.
Oh no, that wasn't even like Mobius. She was just a standard agent.
Oh yeah,
He's in a suit. She was in the riot gear, sort of off doing the more manual task.
Mm-hmm.
So are we to believe that she is also a variant?
Presumably, yeah.
Or are we like going conspiracy theory level here of saying that like, no, she's a plant by the TVA?
I mean, we're obviously going to find out in the first couple of minutes, because
right.
He very intentionally is like, well, we're going to find out so she can do her little mind thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if this next episode started with another of the sort of Trader Vic's flashbacks.
Uh-huh. Ravonna could be a plant just to make all the other agents think that, yeah, we were all created and like we watched her rise through the ranks and I can rise through the ranks too, but it was all part of the plan.
Could be. I mean, either that or the TVA actually was run by timekeepers at some point and then was taken over by someone else, with Ravonna's help, maybe.
Or unintentionally, maybe she's just middle management who didn't know.
Yeah, could be. I mean, she just might just be,
because it seems to inspire a zealotry amongst, because everyone thinks, it's all for their more glorious purpose of preserving this timeline. So everyone's drunk the Kool-Aid pretty thoroughly at the TVA after their brainwashing. I mean, no one is questioning what they're doing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So she could just be like the biggest zealot of them all buying into it, which I could almost see then, even with the Chuck E. Cheese reveal, that, this is her entire life as she knows it, is defending this, and her sole purpose at that point was to take out the Lokis that were in front of her.
Yeah. I mean, could be, that could just be all that was driving her. Personally, I hope that she was in on it because it seems more interesting, but
I'm trying to remember a lot of the Ravonna backstory in the comics that they could pull from. Because wasn't she, I mean, ultimately in the comics, she was plucked out of the timeline by Kang.
Yeah, because she was like a princess.
Oh, no. So Kang fell in love with a version of Ravonna who died. Then Kang went into the timeline and plucked a version of her before she died, also before she really fell in love with Kang, and sort of pulled her then into, out of that reality and created a divergent timeline by plucking her out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how this works with the animatronic Time Lords, Timekeepers, but what if Ravonna was okay, this is how it could work. What if Ravonna was originally a plant by Kang to get in, rise through the ranks, and then together they took out the TVA, but kept up, or the Time Lords, Timekeepers, whatever. And then I'm mad at myself. And then they kept up this charade with the animatronics.
Could be.
And ultimately, the loop that keeps happening is what they're undoing. Maybe that's the loop they're trying to prevent, is that somehow it's always a Loki that
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a thing that they know, like that it's always Lokis that screw up everything, and so maybe that's why Mobius is like, oh, together you have the power to take down the TVA, because maybe there's a memo somewhere that's like, you see this many Lokis together, then tell someone. You know?
Or the head of the TVA is Mobius.
Yeah.
What about Mobius?
I mean, we still haven't resolved the coaster
Right.
thing.
And I hope we do. We got another super chat from Lindsay. Thanks so much. Do you think they'll end the season letting us know who the big bad is and leave the handling of the big bad for season 2?
My feeling at this point is that the big bad is Kang. And we know that he's also in the Ant-Man movie that's coming up. So my thinking is that maybe they wreck whatever he's doing with the TVA, but he gets away. And then, comes back in Ant-Man.
And then comes back in Loki season 2.
Or maybe they wreck what he's doing in the TVA, which is in the quantum realm, and everything starts falling apart, and they escape and leave him there. And that's why Ant-Man ends up dealing with him, because he's in the quantum realm.
Yeah, like Loki doesn't have to have anything to do with the TVA in season 2.
Yeah, it just has to do with Loki.
Yeah.
But it is a good way to not ruin the current MCU timeline of Loki not being there, and also allow him to continue having adventures. Like maybe it's one of those classic things where now, at the end of all this, they're gonna him and Sylvie are gonna fix the TVA. Run it properly, or however you want to look at that. Or now everyone's got free will and can choose to work at the TVA. Or maybe it's just all staffed by Lokis.
I think that's fun.
Little Gator Loki at a typewriter.
Oh, season 2, it's gonna do like that other classic sequel thing. It's not Loki, it's Lokis. Every episode is about a different Loki.
Yeah,
which I'm like, I don't know. You get Richard E. Grant, use him.
How could you not? And the water cooler conversation would be amazing.
They could make it like the anti-TVA, where they're like, oh, there haven't been enough branches in this timeline. Things are getting boring. Let's show up and do some mischief.
I mean, to that point, maybe that would be the thing. Maybe the pruning of the timeline is a problem. And the idea of Loki as a natural function, going back to that whole Galactus being a natural function of the universe, that he's neither good nor evil in the comics. He's considered a force of nature. Maybe there should be randomness in the universe, and the TVA has been working against the natural tendency of the universe, so mischief is needed.
So things have diverted too far into orders.
So Loki has a function. I mean, maybe it's like what mutation is in nature that makes the universe or the multiverse stronger.
Oh, yeah. What if, we did this with WandaVision too, about like, how are the mutants going to come in? But maybe the TVA has been stopping chaos.
Yeah. And, you mentioned What If. That's a series we have coming down the pike, which is going to be hard to explain if you're maintaining a one true timeline view of the multiverse.
Yeah. I mean, we said this like at the first episode that it's got to end with the multiverse happening, right? Because of what we know about the next Spider-Man movie.
Well, and
5 months.
Doctor Strange too, Multiverse of Madness. It's in the title.
But I mean, that happens next year, right? Yeah, that's when that comes out, and Spider-Man comes out in December. So there's got to be some multiverse thing happening already.
I mean, it's all connected now. That's what they're finally telling us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see. I mean, also that's again believing that the TVA has been doing what they've been saying,
right?
That there actually are a pruning function or a one true timeline function, because we still haven't gotten a real explanation for what Sylvie's plan was with all of those little time canisters that she launched out.
I thought that was just
a distraction.
Yeah, I think that's what we settled on, is that they all got dealt with, but it allowed
maybe they were assembling the team of super Lokis from across multiple timelines.
I just figure it was a distraction and kind of like a maybe foreshadowing of seeing all those branches. We'll see it happen again. But maybe we get all these Lokis to work together and they want to make a big multiverse. They send them all to different parts and have them all hold hands. And then all over the timeline, branches.
Maybe we see at the end a restoration of all of them to reinstated timelines. So much like that montage we were talking about, maybe we'll see the timeline version of like the end of the Return of the Jedi Special Edition. We see just here's classic Loki back in classic Loki or Asgard. Here's Gator Loki and Gator Loki Asgard fighting Throg.
I mean, if they all just get to go back to where they came from before they were taken away,
then you are launching What If. Then you're going, hey, this is all these different timelines where something slightly different happened, and here's the events.
One thing that I'm really curious about, and this is not really related to what we were just talking about, but I'm curious if Wanda is going to be, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that she's going to be in the show, but if in the grand scheme of things, like what's happening in Loki and what happened in WandaVision is going to end up mattering towards the same points, because we know she's a Nexus point. These are like Nexus events. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that they're using the same word for both of those things. Like in the comics, that means that she's like a linchpin for her timeline, basically. And so, and she does chaos magic. And right now we know that the universe is in more order than it really should be. Like maybe something that with this story is going to get tied up with something Wanda does in the future. Like maybe that's why she ends up in Multiverse of Madness.
Also, it would sort of make sense, even more reinforcing, in pulling what the Ancient One was talking about, because the Ancient One is the one who described this whole branching timeline thing in Endgame as also being a guardian of the time stream using the time stone. That more closely ties in Doctor Strange having to be there, as that was a function of what the Sorcerer Supreme was supposed to do, was also to guard the time stream, or at least their native time stream.
Yeah.
Although her presentation of it was rather selfish when you come right down to it. It was basically, I don't care about anything else that happens, but this, I'm preserving this, and my determination of what, I mean, much like the TVA's intended purpose, this is what I think is the right way, and anything that deviates from it. Although Strange has lost that ability without the time stone.
Well, and if I remember right, in the comics, the TVA was less about like keeping multiverse things from happening and more just about like policing time travel abuses. Like if someone was going to go back in time and cause some crazy paradox, then they would step in and, keep that from happening. But I could be misremembering. I mean, those are super.
Yeah, comics. I mean, their first big sort of explanatory thing was in that Fantastic Four run by Walter Simonson that really played around with, and they brought Death's Head, I think, was their judge that they brought in to handle it as like their hired enforcer. It never made sense as what would trigger them having to step in.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I remember correctly, and I may be misremembering, I think it was largely anyone just using time travel. No matter what you were doing, it's like you shouldn't be traveling in the time stream. Just people shouldn't be doing it. Just, it's really ill-defined what could happen, but things could happen. Just don't do it. We don't want anyone else doing it. If we see someone doing it, then it's a problem. And I think because around that time, the Fantastic Four were doing a lot of time travel nonsense, and that's when it became stepped in.
It did kind of become why can't the superheroes just time travel and fix everything? It's like, well, because the TVA is going to come after them if they do that.
Yeah.
But they kind of threw that out the window in the first episode, because Loki was like, oh, you want the Avengers? They time traveled, and they're like, no, they were supposed to.
Yeah, they made the MCU version of the TVA have a completely different purpose or goal, which, I mean, maybe that wasn't always their purpose,
Yeah.
Like maybe that is just because they were taken over by Kang or whoever, and maybe before that they were actually the time cops,
Well, you have seen that from Kang in the comics as far as preserving his own timeline. So there could be a sequence of events that Kang specifically is trying to preserve that would lead to Kang. Because, he's in the future. I mean, one version of Kang is a descendant of a certain person. If you want to preserve the fact that you're still a descendant of that person, you need to preserve them or the events that led up to your conception.
Mhm.
So, that could be the sacred timeline that the TVA is tasked with preserving, is the Kang timeline that keeps him extant.
Well, and also because Kang has a lot of reasons to prevent other Kangs from coming into existence. So
Much like Loki. I mean, Kang essentially has the Loki problem
Mhm.
that they presented, is that, they're all going to vie to be the best and the supreme version of that, and will instantly view all others as lesser.
Or at least as a major threat.
Yeah, because I know I'm a jerk, so you must be a jerk. So I got to be the jerk first.
Yeah.
Which is what you saw completely with that Council of Cross-Time Kangs thing, which is just beautiful comedy of them all sniping at each other. It's like, well, I know you're going to betray me first because I would do that to me, and I'm you.
Well, hopefully we get to see that next week. I have to end for today because I have to be on another podcast in 3 minutes. So, Ken, thanks for jumping in with us.
Happy to do so.
And being our Molly for the episode.
If you ever need to send up the signal,
all right.
Don't hesitate. I hope I've just muddied the waters further.
Where can people find you online?
At Ken Plume is probably the easiest. And patreon.com/Ken Plume. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there.
Great. Ashton?
I'm on Twitch at Yeti Boatman. I play video games and stuff.
And you can keep watching me in 3 minutes over on Eckert's Ladder's YouTube channel. We're going to be talking about The Rising Storm, the latest High Republic book, and I'm so psyched to do that because I love it to death. So yeah,
no time travel.
No. Come hang out with us over there. But thank you all for watching. Thanks for your questions and your super chats, and we'll see you next week.